I know teachers right now are into their 40s who are still paying college loans off.
The people that aren't in education complain about what we're not doing in education. You're like, all right, so the people that are doing cool stuff, you almost have borderline a moral obligation to say, all right, this is what I'm doing then.
Let me ask you a very quick question. Is it easier to get a passport than it is to substitute teach?
Yep. Like, be lazy. Well, if I'm training people to be teachers, be lazy. Yeah, shut up and let them do it.
There's two emotions that I straddle, right? Is hope and worry. So I'm worried to death about kids, but I'm super hopeful about the future.
Education wants the instant gratification. They want the weeds. They don't want the trees.
CTE is coming gangbusters for the traditional, practitioners who don't want to even entertain moving things around for the sake of efficacy.
Do we need as much time as we need to do school?
I mean, if you're asking a 14-year-old, they're going to tell you a weekend will be fine. But no, I want to challenge kids.
If you're about to listen to this podcast, buckle up.
You're listening to the Disrupt Education podcast. Here are your hosts, Peter Hostrawser and Alli Dahl.
Another week, another podcast. Alli Dahl, Peter Hostrawser, Disrupt Education. Thank you all for being here. That was a great conversation last week, Alli.
It was. And it was vulnerable conversation.
Yes.
It was so it was something I didn't expect with this series, going into it, we're reaching back to students that you had, or you interviewed in the early episodes, like episode 7 with Isaac Palmer. And then last week was with Liam Sudling, and he was on episode 30, like baby episodes. This is when Peter, by the way, you haven't watched these episodes.
Raw. That was raw.
Raw, and it's a whole production. It's so cool, honestly. And so I'm like, man, we need to road show and go on the road and interview people. I just feel like this is it, that's gonna come again. It wasn't a one-time thing. And I guess I'm thinking, a lot these students are in their mid-20s, and your mid-20s can be, you can be really, really grounded in your mid-20s, and you can be all over your place in your mid-20s, and both are totally okay. But it's sometimes a difficult time in your life because it's a really building, and you might not feel like you're where you want to be and progressing and stuff. I mean, my mid-20s, I was just starting teaching, and I felt behind because I didn't start teaching when I was 22. I started teaching when I was 25. Right? I remember thinking oh, my friends already posting their third year, and my first year teaching was rough. In terms of the workload. Yeah. And Liam said something interesting. He's like, sales wasn't for me. If you want to do great at sales, you have to put in the work. I mean, I remember waking up 4 to 5 a.m. every day, working until 4, 5, 6 p.m. at the school, then coming home to eat dinner, to then work until I went to sleep at 9 p.m. To then do it again. And luckily I had a mentor my first year teaching who was like, it gets better. Because your first year you're creating, and then the next year you're just editing and refining. You don't have to create lessons every single day. I mean, in theory you do, because you're not doing the same thing, but it is different because you've at least gone through a year. Anyway, to the point, just with Liam, it's you could be starting a new job. He just recently switched jobs, and it's you're in a state of newness, and it's the real world is sinking in, and you're feeling the weight of it in completely different ways. And so I applaud Liam for being on the podcast and being vulnerable and honest and raw, because it's not always easy to share where you're at any stage in life, right? And being on a podcast, oftentimes our guests come to us and they just finished an awesome project or something. And this series, it's we're just want to know, 7 years ago, you were on the podcast, you said these things. What would you say now? Yeah. Totally different.
He brought back a lot of my own memories in my 20s. And I think that's just attributed to his authentic, being vulnerable. And I really like that because we can plug in some things that Isaac said as well about now you look at, at that age, I didn't have social media, right?
Mhm.
And now you have social media, and you see probably, no one's going to post the tough times, the nights that you don't sleep, and those types of things. And Isaac kind of said that. He's like, it's fake. Like there's a lot of fake
Uh,
stuff out there. And so that pressure is now probably mounted a little higher than it was in my 20s. But I can tell you, like right out in my college plus years, I love that college plus because that gives grace to everybody, even if they didn't go to college, but in that time in their 20s, like that is a time of growth and a time of experimentation and really just trying to figure out, maybe your why. And I think it's extremely rare that somebody knows their why at a very young age.
mhm.
And I go back to mine, right out of college, I went into bartending school, and then I bartended at a country club, and then I moved down to Florida with a buddy of mine, and then I worked at a hotel for a little while, and then I worked on a golf course. So when you said 5 a.m., I remember like I had to get up, and it was excruciating work, but you just did it. And then you started to look at your checkbook, and you're like, wait, I'm not really saving money here. Um, Mind you, I bought a BMW while I was a bartender. So that was probably not a good idea because, though, I wanted to show all my college buddies, yo, I'm making it. And that's the reason why I bought the car. I love the car, and I kept it for like almost 20 years. But like, um, and luckily it didn't break my bank, but I didn't save anything, back then. But you always constantly in your own mind, like thinking I'm supposed to be somewhere. And there's nothing truer than, that comes later in life. I did not start my teaching career until I was 29. And so that's kind of how crazy it is. So I think there's one humongous takeaway is that college plus years thing that Liam said, and us understanding and really preparing our students wherever they are and wherever we're
Mhm.
teaching for that and giving them those experiences and sharing those experiences or having people in that area that are going to be humble and say, yeah, this is a playground right now.
I I think to your point about the pressure, the social media ads, and it's completely fake. Nobody posts their bad days. Like, I mean, it's so rare, and it's a highlight reel.
Hmm.
But I do see it, trickling down in the elementary, middle school levels, is that everybody wants to be older or further along than they are until they're older and further along, and
What's
then
the
they're like,
magic number? What's that year? I don't know. Is
I
it?
don't know. But I think it's a really valuable point in education is that, you don't have to speed things up and you don't have to know. Because Liam, right, if we look at his story, like he had the conviction, he was like, I know exactly
Hmm.
what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And he's kind of unwinding that, which is 100% normal and fine. And it's great if you think you know what you want to do.
Hmm.
I always would always coach students and be like, it's okay if you change your mind. Like,
Yeah.
it's okay if you change your mind. Like at any point, right? You like chemistry now. You might not in college. Like I never wanted to hold kids who just fell in love with my subject
Hmm.
to be like, you have to be a chemical engineer or you have to be a chem lab, or a chemistry teacher, right? Like I'd always be like, I love that you love this class and love math and science. I want to give you the opportunity to just like if you ever change your mind, it's
Yeah.
okay. I won't judge you. Like that permission to have those conversations with students and in education, right? Like we talked so much about career, college, pathways, making
Hmm.
choices. And like, let's be real, your brain does not stop developing until you're 25. Like
Right.
basically the age that these students that we're having on this series are at.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
they literally have just spent the last 7 years with their brain still developing. And right, and I love that he said it's be more open to the things you don't like in
Hmm.
high school. Like we've said this many times about the importance of those experiences and just getting kids, around different things because you just never know.
Yeah.
But then the encouragement of being like, it's okay to try things and it's okay to be open to things that you might not like because you never know tomorrow you might not. Like your taste buds change every 7-ish years on
Hmm.
average. Kids either start liking coffee at age 14 or 21 or 28. It's very, very typical times,
Hmm.
right? I hated coffee in high school. And I looked at my friends who drank coffee in high school and I was like, that is the most disgusting drink I've ever tasted. And I kid you not, my junior year of college, as I was turning 21, I had coffee and I was like, wow, this tastes amazing.
Hmm.
I like hate the word like never and always. Like I'm
Hmm.
never going to do that or I'm always going to go this way or because it's not true.
Hmm.
We change, we adapt, we can change our mind, we can change our path. And in education, like the freedom that kids could feel if they're not like always like, well, what are you going to do?
Hmm.
What are you going to do? I think a plan is important, but also have a plan, like TJ Vari said.
Hmm.
But like, if you decide that's not the right plan, then just find a new one, and
Yep.
it's okay.
Yeah. It's interesting because you mentioned there, obviously like it's okay to change and directions. One of the things that happened at the end of this school year with our interns was about half of them said that a higher percentage than I was used to said this is not the route I want to go, or I don't want a job like this. I don't like this
Mhm.
type of, computer programming or this type of work, which was interesting, or this area of marketing. It was funny because one person was like, social media marketing absolutely sucks. It's so boring and I hate it. Right. And that's what she went into. Right. And I think that's very important to let people know that. And then the other thing though is at the end of my time down in Florida, it was like, all right, I'm not making the money, and so that started to change some ideas. So one of the challenge questions that I had for a student who was working with a very prominent company in California out of Chicago, right? And this is a high school student, and he's done some amazing work with this company. He was like, I don't really like doing it. Like it just doesn't, it's not, there's a dream out there. But then I asked him, well, what if they paid you 150 grand a year? Would that change your mind? And
Mm.
he stopped right away and he was like, well, yeah, I think I'd work that. I would be able to manage, and then so that's life though, right? Like, I think one of the things that I've taken away from both of our conversations that we had so far are these and it's no disrespect to anybody, but they have these like glorified things that they think are going to happen. And I think one of the hardest part about being an educator, especially at the level that, we are kind of in the secondary, post-secondary area, is we don't want to crush those dreams.
Right.
We want to help guide them, but we can't. Like
Yep.
we've got to be able to give them the experiences and let them go, like get out of their way. And I know we've had so many guests do that. And definitely I'm not like an engineering guy, but I can imagine like some of the engineering teachers at OPRF where I used to work would be like, "Oh no, man, it's going to be different," or "You got to do it this way," and you're not going to hear it. You're just not going to hear it until you experience it. And I think that's the balance in education where you go to bed at night knowing that you did your best trying to help somebody understand something, but know that you cannot have somebody, especially at that age, fully understand something that they don't know what they don't know. So
Yeah.
and
You
and I,
you
that's
just
I
need.
just love like that was a great choice because I will tell everybody, all of my listeners, like the Allie came back and we you need to get Liam on. I'm skewed because I know these people, right? I've worked with them before, so that was he's truly humble, and he's just he's a straight shooter. He's always been that way, even when he was back in college, even in class. Like he would let you know, yeah, you know what, I'm just not feeling working today, and like, kids would try to BS you and all that, but he
Oh
wouldn't.
yeah.
Like he was just a straight, so somewhere ingrained in his upbringing, there was a humbleness that, yeah, let's go, So,
I always appreciated honest students. Like today, I was subbing in this kid. I was like, "Are we gonna work on this?
hmm
This assigned work?" And the student looked at me. They considered telling me, yes and not doing it. But then they just looked at me and they're like, "No, I'm probably not going to do it." And I was like, "Well, fair enough.
yeah,
I appreciate the honesty." Right?
right.
Like it's actually uncommon.
Yeah, yeah,
The default is to say yes and
hmm
then not do it.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
it to your point about the hard part of being in education, as I was picturing when you were saying that, it's like, I'm thinking of like, oh, you're, a mama bird up, hop a bird, and you have to let the birds fly, and you have to let them leave the nest, and they might crash and fall, and Liam made the point, of college plus, and that it the that didn't end until he got fired. Well, or like you get fired, right? Like
yeah,
that at some point, and that's what it's like, it's crushing because you don't want your students to go out and outside of school and quote unquote fail, whatever that
hmm
definition is for
hmm
someone. It is like, because you feel a sense of, like, I don't know, it's not like obligation, but you care about your students and in education as you should, but you can't fix their life. You can't fix the failures. Like
hmm
that's why we advocate, I think, so strongly on the podcast for like, let them fail in a safe environment
yeah,
so that they, when they're in the real world, they don't spiral or like they get plugged into maybe a bad situation or like completely detach, right? Like
yeah,
I think for me, that's my fear is with former students is worrying like, uh like, are they okay? Right?
hmm
Like, will they recover? And I mean, like, you literally can't save them or you don't, but like, I do like that for me is hitting like really hard in this episode, just thinking like, I don't want my students to fail. Like, I always told students, like, I don't grade you. I don't give grades. I just mark like what you did. Like,
yes,
I'm not judging you.
hmm
I'm a recorder. Like,
yeah,
I don't, I'm here to support you. I would love nothing more than all of you to learn all of the material, ace it. Like, I would love that. That is 100% like what I want. Like, I want you to be successful. I want you to be a better human person. Like, chemistry is the vehicle in which I'm using to help you learn and grow. That's
yeah,
always what I would say.
yeah.
But I hated hearing about, the missed opportunities or the quote unquote failures. And then like the kid not knowing what to do with it.
hmm Yeah.
That's what's hard. Liam,
Yeah.
that's not the case. Like he's a pivoter. He's like making moves. Like he's not settling. And I
hmm
love that. But that's not easy for everyone, right?
Right.
And that's the part of education that can be really difficult is you're like, but I want to protect them. But you're actually hurting them more in the long run because they're just gonna leave the nest and crash, and then
Right.
they've got a broken wing, and what are they gonna do? Baby
Yeah.
bird.
This episode's for the birds. I like it. No, it is. And I'm just remembering like the final days of school this past year, right? And our final day was seniors. And we have seniors. That's all I teach right now. There's a few juniors that are actually in our courses, but I don't have one. My colleague has one, two of them actually. But with seniors, they're so excited, they're so burnt out, and one thing happened where I literally had to. People are gonna like laugh about what I'm going to say. They're going to have an emotional reaction to what I'm about to say. But I chased down a kid, right? Like found him during the last day.
Mm.
It was a big summative assignment. I'm not into grades or whatever, but like this kid needed to have the summative in, and it was a post on LinkedIn. Like they needed to post on LinkedIn, and that's where we were like part of our curriculum is that you need to grow your network now. Like, guess what? Like no one's going to chase you after this up until the last day. But one thing that was interesting is when he was trying a couple things, and we all know these kids had like 2 weeks to do this assignment, blah blah blah, all this stuff. And umpteen reminds and emails and all these different things go out. But when I brought him into my office and I sat down with him for like 2 minutes over his lunch, and we figured it out quickly because there was some sort of error, and it was because there was a student account versus a personal account, all that stuff. So we figured it out rather quickly. He had the post, it wasn't showing up. And he just looked at me and he's like, you know what? Thank you for coming to get me, you
Mm.
know? And to me, I think that's education. I think that, I can be mad at him. And as a matter of fact, I told him like he's going to our local community college, and I'm like, look, you're likely not going to have a professor. There might be some that will do this, but there's probably going to be more that aren't going to do this. So I just want you to know that, right? So that's why I get frustrated. It's just a conversation. You don't take it personally.
No.
But like you said, like, you're kind of like Mama Bird and Papa Bird. You're like, you broke your wing. Okay. Well, next up, we just got to keep you away from the predators because they're gonna eat you. So yeah, all right, that was extreme. But but that's what when he said thank you, that's when you're just like, all right,
Mm.
yeah, I do care. And
Mm.
I am trying to get you to live your best life. And realizing though, with Liam, I mean, we're talking, these are 17, 18-year olds. And we talked to, what you said about like the brain developing all the way to 25. That's 8 years, 7, 8 years more. So
Mm.
you leave them at the point of where you can leave them, and you do your best, and let the rest be the rest. I think that should be a song. I don't know.
Let the rest be the rest. Any songwriters out there? Hey, we need Isaac. Is
Yes,
that
right,
that
right, right.
is that something we can use?
Yeah.
I I mean, there's a lot of like really good takeaways
Yeah.
from Liam's episode
Mhm.
and his story. One of the last things that he left with, and I, I love the rawness of these students because they're not in education, like, right? They're just in the
Mhm.
workforce.
Mhm.
They, well, from what I can tell, neither of them have been in a school since high school/college,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So they don't have like they're not selling us anything, like quote unquote, like they don't have an agenda, like
Mhm.
they're not right. So when he said, one, it's really cool to apply yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, love that. But then also he was like mandatory co-ops,
Yes.
right? It was
Yep.
like, wow, experience coming
Hmm.
from someone who has gone in the work field and he's done like the the field versus the computer versus I don't think he had all of those experiences, and so he didn't really understand what he liked, right? So
Hmm.
now he's in the workforce figuring that out. It's rough figuring it out in the workforce. And I mean, like, sometimes you just have to. But what if he had had more co-ops in high school, in college?
Yep.
I bet I have a feeling he probably would have skipped one of those things that he did. He would have been like hard no to sales. Like
More
I don't know, like
clarity. Yeah, he
maybe
would
more
have more
clarity. I
clarity.
don't know.
Yeah.
So I just think that that's a really good this is from people who are in their mid 20s. They're like I field trips experiences like look, you heard it here on the Disrupt Education podcast. I mean, it's not just us saying it.
Hmm.
It's not just those principals and the guests that we have that are in education day in and day out saying it, right? Working with schools. it's also kids who were in school and they're like, yeah, if I could go back, that's what I want.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. That's it. I mean, and boy, what a field trip though. Scavenger hunt in Chicago. Whew. I feel like that would be a nightmare, but just the greatest thing ever. So it's kind of like I don't know, that would with middle school kids. But wow, that really kind of was a memory for him, and I'm like, yeah, and I'm so humbled. Like he remembered, one of my colleagues with the Chick-fil-A, presentation thing that they had to do, and then we work with Coca-Cola. Such good stuff. And I'm so glad that I learned that from basically listening to students back in the day. They just wanted real stuff. So we just went out and got it. And I was like, and it really is an education is listening, just listening, hearing every problem that you sense, or if somebody's complaining, whether it's an educator, a student, or whatever, listen to it because there's an opportunity in there. And within that opportunity, you start to ask, well, what if, right? And just get your brainstorm together. If you need like a quick start, use AI to like, hey, come up with 3 ideas and then expand on it or whatever. And really, that's kind of how we've kind of build our curriculum now, right? I mean, it's what if, and you thrive and you have some fun. And yeah, I threw a lot out the door when I did the Coca-Cola project, and here we are, well, that was probably 2015, so 12 years ago. And he still remembers. So to me, that's a win. So think about those things. We got more guests coming up. I cannot. These are great conversations. It's totally going in a different area than what I thought it would go. But I think that's the beauty of it, right?
That's what we love. We do not, like, just to remind listeners, or if you're new here, we don't script questions. We I mean, we learn about our guests, or we
Sure.
we have ideas, but we really just kind of listen and try to build off of what people are saying. And I mean, like, we disrupt our own podcast all the time, which is fun. And this series, yeah, like we didn't set expectations. We're like, we just want to hear the raw, authentic voices of former students in their mid-20s that maybe they have like a little less rose-colored glasses, but like they still kind of have them. I mean, I think we're getting really good perspectives here that are different than like just getting the 18-year-old that's just out of high school, for mixing it up a little bit. So they have a little experience, but they're not on here with this deep embedded connection. And maybe they don't really care about disrupting education. So it's interesting. I love it.
Yeah, so much to learn. Obviously, reach out to any of our guests. You'll see any of their connections underneath. Go back and watch like episode 7, episode 30. And they're out on YouTube. They're out on Spotify. And it's interesting. You can actually see them, 7 years ago too. And myself, I had some less grays, just saying. I looked a little younger, but Alli, you've been the same because you were not on those podcasts, so you still look young. But thank you guys. Head over to Disrupt Education Podcast for any information. You can connect with Alli, myself there. And thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with another round of guests, and can't wait to talk to you again. We'll talk to you later. That's a wrap on this episode of the Disrupt Education Podcast. Let's keep the momentum going. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share this episode out.
If you want to dive deeper into disrupting education, visit our website at disrupteducationpodcast.com.
Here's the bottom line. We believe real change in education starts locally. It happens when communities come together to rethink learning. If you're an educator, school leader, or organization looking to take action towards real change in education, we are here to help. Reach out and connect.
And we'd love to hear your thoughts on today's episode. So drop us a line, wherever you listen. And until next time, take that bold step beyond your comfort zone. Challenge the status quo and be the change education truly needs.
Because at the end of the day, education isn't just about subjects, it's about students. And when we dare to disrupt, the future of learning is waiting.